Welcome to the How to Wedding Podcast, the wedding guide with nothing to hide. Hi, I'm your host, Paul Santiago. When we come back, Ilana Rubin of Perfect the Event is here, and we're talking about allocating time in your wedding timeline to be able to capture everything properly. Let's face it, you don't want to be lost in the woods with someone who grew up in the city, right? How to Wedding is coming right up because, just like what we always say, if we're getting lost, let's get lost together. Let's get lost together. And I feel like this is quite alright. Let's get lost together. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for having me come on here as a planner. I know we've had some chats in the past about marketing and stuff, so I'm pretty excited to talk more wedding related and about what both of us kind of do.
Me too. And because we've known each other for so long, I'm really excited to talk to you about a lot of stuff. Not a lot of stuff, but a lot of informational.
Long
things.
enough, but don't say like so long because then it puts an age on us, and that just
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're right. Okay. A year.
There you go. Over a year, Paul.
Okay. I like that. Okay. So before we start, I would love it if you tell the listeners and the viewers something about yourself that might surprise them about you.
Something that would probably surprise people is well, there's actually quite a few things, but let's keep it interesting and kind of basic. I'll give you two. How about that? So one is I'm actually originally from the East Coast. So I moved to California about 5 years ago, and I had to start literally from scratch and from the ground up. I knew nobody. I literally knew like nobody here. So I started my business from the ground up by knowing zero people when I started it. So kind of interesting on that one. And then something fun is my dad's family is from Cuba, so we have a little bit of European and Spanish influence in my family.
That's so cool. Yeah, when I found out you always vacation in Miami, I'm like, my gosh, that's my favorite place.
At least once a year, you got to get your fix.
Oh, yeah, we're looking into that this year. I'm so excited. Okay, so now that we've discovered something about you, I would love it if you tell them how you got into the industry and what you're up to right now.
Sure. So I've been in, we'll just say in the event industry for quite some time. I think I'm going into like over 9 years at this point. I'm not that old, but over 9 years at this point. So I started off on the East Coast, as I mentioned. And when I first started off, I was dabbling in what we call large scale social events. So that's pretty much anything from like 2,000 people to 10,000 people. And I was doing trade shows, concerts, sporting events at arenas, basically producing them, marketing them, and then executing them as well with the company I was working for. And then I got into the wedding scene by working for a 75-acre property out in the East Coast as well. That role quickly also developed into director of sales and marketing. So I was marketing the property for basically everything that we did there, whether it was the pool club, members, other events, restaurant, the marina that we had too, and then still booking weddings, executing them, and making sure that they go off without a hitch. When I moved out to California 5 years ago, I was working for Fairmont, which is a hotel line also owned by Swiss Hotels. So when I came out here, I was a catering sales manager, or CSM, what we say, just shorten a little bit of abbreviation. So I was a CSM for them. And I had a corporate market. So I kind of did like a little bit of everything under the sun, from like giant parties to just like seminars or just doing work meeting for 5 people. So kind of did a little bit of everything and had a ton of different types of clientele. And that's when I was like, look, like I've always wanted to start my own business. I was always that person, like, what can I do next? Like, what can I start? And I was always super creative in that sense. And I was like, I love events. I've been in it for a long time now. I feel well-rounded. And that's when I literally quit my job cold turkey and decided to start my business out here knowing zero people. Yeah, a little risky, but I was willing to take the risk. And I just told myself, you know, what's the worst case scenario? I go get a job. Like I go work at another hotel or I go work for a venue or property. So that was always like in the back of my mind, but I was prepared. I did all my homework. I went to different site tours for venues and checked everything out. I even had a roster of like vendors that I found online that I was like, I love what they do. I want to reach out to them and connect with them. So I kind of did all my homework and foundation before I even launched my business. And then when I launched my business, I was ready to rock. So I had vendors on my side already. I was familiar with properties in the area. I made myself knowledgeable. Knowledge is power. And then when I launched, I basically just started, to be frank, like we'll call it grassroots. So anything from bridal shows to just networking to just trying to figure out, who's who, and then getting my clients that way. So everything was really underground at first. And now I've been fortunate that everything is referral based.
I'm fortunate that you're here because you've been considered, at least I have considered you a rising star, if not a star already in the industry, and because of your modern, your weddings are like instant modern classic, and it's being in California, being in SoCal, it's so rare to see that now, which is weird because everyone's trying to go in a different route, and your weddings that you post are just all modern instant classics, right? I was wondering, of course it took you a long time to get to that style, but what are your inspirations?
So some of my inspirations based on what we do is I don't want to give you like the generic responses. I look at things in life and it inspires me. Yeah, I love to shop and I see things and I'm like, that looks awesome. Like that inspires me. I will say that I have always been a very imaginative individual. So I actually, fun fact, not to like, it's on topic. So I'm going to go with this. I started off when I was in college. I actually went for a graphic design BA. And then I changed over to business management. So I was going to get my bachelor's in graphic design because I love art. Like my mom was, well, she still is, but my mom was an artist. My brother dabbled in graphic design. And ever since I was little, like I've just always loved art. I've always done art classes. And then the computer side just like really latched on to me. So I've always kind of like drawn inspiration from being a creative individual in my own head, and I think of something. And so if I see something when I'm out, whether it's just architecture, walking around in home goods, I mean, literally anything, and then just taking that piece, but then flipping it and creating it into something else, but also having my clients in mind. I feel like I'm constantly out, and when I am out, I'm just always thinking about our couples, our clients, and my work. So whether that's a healthy obsession or not, but I am. So when I'm out, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. What can I do with that? That looks great. So I will say yes from like every day. That's the generic answer, but the real underlying is I've just always had kind of an imaginative mind. So for me, it's like, okay, I think this would be cool and this looks good together. And then anytime I have my inspiration, I like to map it out so that way I can see what it looks like together and if it flows cohesively. So kind of generic answer, Paul, but
Actually, no, because whenever I work with you, the couples that you have share the same taste.
Yeah.
Share the same personality.
And they have very similar personality traits. I mean, I've been fortunate that they've all been, really nice. They like to party, like they like to have a good time. They're good humans. Like they're genuinely good people. But they all have like their own little, and they all like, a little bit more modern. I call it the organic glam, whatever you want to call it. Like it's still like kind of organic, but it's definitely not boho, but it's definitely glamorous, but it's not like just balls of stuff. So they definitely have that appeal, but then they all have their own personality. I mean, I even posted the other day, I blogged one of my weddings, and it was, a white color themed wedding. And the first thing every couple asks me when they want like an all white neutral palette is, well, isn't it going to look like everyone else's? And I'm like, no, like totally not. So I try to like keep them in mind, keep the property in mind, and then say, okay, like what can we do to make it them and their personality? So I try to keep everything in mind.
Wasn't that the wedding we did together, Kylie?
It was! Oh. Yeah! It was our Broken Hill wedding we just did this past, not too long ago, a couple months ago. So I just blogged that kind of slacking on my blogs when it comes to highlighting, but I posted that, and yeah, it was like one of those where it's like, hey, we want like a neutral palette wedding, like all white, like is it gonna make sense for what we are? And it's like, absolutely, like we're gonna make it different, and we did. So
Yeah, I feel like your difference from other planners is that you bring out the personality of the couple, but at the same time, you preserve that taste that they have, which looks great on photos and video.
Yeah, like I mean, I definitely have my own taste, and I'm very transparent, like especially in initial meetings. It's like, here's the presentation, you've seen what I've done online, like this is what I do, and I still incorporate them, but I definitely have a feel. Like if someone ever came up to me and was like, oh, I want to have more of a bohemian wedding, or I want to have more of this like desert rustic vibes, like not your girl. So, and that's fine. And I think people understand that now based on what I translate online. So
Yeah, I think it's important. It's important to say no if you can't do it, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
not your specialty. I like that. Yeah, it's being honest, because a lot of people, especially now that the market is saturated, like every single industry is saturated, every single category,
Oh yeah, for
people just
sure.
say yes. Like I was talking to.
It's so expensive out here, and it's like, how are you going to start a business? Like it's expensive. So I mean, it's expensive for the couple, and it's expensive for vendors. So I'm like, how's this so saturated? But it is. It really is.
It is. I can't believe how saturated it is, but it's good. I guess it's good for competition.
Keep it simple.
So okay, now I want to ask you, since you attract all these couples,
Mhm.
how do they find you? How do you know? Do you know how they find you, or is it like?
Yeah, so most of them are referral based. I will say 90% are venue. Okay, maybe not 90%, but like 80% are venue referrals, and then there's like a good 15%, 10% that are other vendor or past client referrals, and then that last 10% is organically, whether it's Instagram. I am on the Knot, and I know people feel indifferent about it, but you know what? I get leads from it, and all it takes is one booking for me, and I easily made up what it costs for the year. So organic used to be actually much bigger percentage for me, but now it's been predominantly referrals.
I mean, as long as it works for you, right?
Mhm. Yep, it
Eh,
works.
eh,
Yeah, for me. So
yeah, it works for us too, so I can't complain.
I will say, okay, so not to like totally unrelated to our conversation, but just a little tip out there for anybody kind of listening or watching. I kind of like segued it my own way. So like most people, this is what they would do. You get an inquiry on like the Knot, Wedding Wire, whatever you advertise on. You get an inquiry and then you respond like, hey, let's set up a phone call, or like, hey, here's my packages. No, I like totally bypassed all that. And I actually I hate templates. FYI, I hate email templates because I like being personal, but I do have a template for my Knot. So every time I get like an inquiry, instead I send them this template that basically says like, hello, congratulations, thank you so much. We'd love to get a little bit more information about you so we can schedule an initial meeting with the owner of the company. So that way we can create something custom for you and get to know each other better. Please visit our link and fill out our contact form. And I send that, and I make them I will not follow up with anybody on the Knot if they do not go and fill out my contact form. Like my contact form, like I direct them automatically to my website. I don't even communicate through the Knot. I just use it as like a referral lead source. So my little tip, and it's been working, because people who are not serious obviously don't fill out my contact form, and people who are very serious do. And then I get more information, and I can scale it from there. And half the time, I feel like the information I get from their Knot account is like not accurate anyway. They put in like a Thursday wedding, and they're like, "No, I'm getting married Saturday." Like 2 months later, I'm like, "Okay, like that's not what you put on there, so that's fine." So I always direct them to my contact form, and then that's how I source them. And then I just put in like, "Oh, they found me on the Knot," and like that's how I track where the lead came from.
Okay, that's a really good point, bringing up that template thing, because
Mm-hmm.
we don't like template inquiries either, right? Just so the couples who are listening and watching, we don't like template. Like we get an email saying, "What how much do you charge? What are your packages?" we want to know more about you. We want to, this is a small business. We're doing this because we're passionate and we love what we do.
Right.
So it's not something that, hey, how much do you charge?
So it's like, oh, how much do you charge? Oh, that's it, done. It's like, whoa, like let's make sure like we're compatible and like everything works out, because this is a relationship we're about to go in. So like let's make sure it's a good ride while we're riding. So like it's like let's make sure it's a good time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's a good hit.
So okay, now that we're getting into the meat of what we're talking about, since you've had a lot of weddings under your belt already and you've pretty much seen everything and dealt with most of it, what are the common mistakes that you see couples make in their process of planning their wedding?
That is a fabulous question. So I have my personal business model has evolved over time, but I will say that based on my experience in the past and even some currently, when it comes to a planner who is not your full service planner, I feel like they definitely see a lot more mistakes than if I were to come in from day one. So, and I say that meaning even like, hey, I booked a venue and I have nothing else, and now I need you to come in and like finish it. Looking at contracts, and when I say contracts, I'm not a lawyer, but like looking at it and being like, okay, like what concessions did you get, with your venue? I've worked venue side for so many years. So it's like, I don't want to nickel and dime for things, but realistically, it's like, hey, like if you already have those Shivari chairs in house and you're trying to charge somebody for more, to just upgrade them, but they're already in house, maybe that's something you should have asked for in your contract before you contracted, because you can't go backwards. Or things like booking other vendors and not realizing, for example, I'm going to use musicians. So there's a lot of times and there's a lot of factors that go into, ceremony, cocktail, or reception. And then you have to think about all your traditions that you're doing. So if you book, a DJ for maybe just like your reception or a cocktail hour and reception, okay, who's doing your ceremony? Did you book the proper amount for ceremony? What about the power that they need? There are certain things that like I just don't expect couples to know, whether that means like if you booked a band, do they need a power drop? Did you even find out how much the power drop is from the venue before you contracted? And does AV even know you're having that? So space is also a huge one that I feel like couples do not realize, because even coming from venue side, when I would tour people, and all the venues we work at do a great job at this. So I've had some in the past, but now we're good. But I would tour and be like, hey, so just so you know, like our max capacity is 250, but with a dance floor and a band, you're probably at like 200. So, and in the past, like I found that that's not always communicated. It's just, or it might be, but the couple just looks at the max capacity and goes, oh, we can do this. Like, no problem. Same thing with like food and beverage minimums. They're like, oh yeah, like that's all I have to spend, or oh, I can invite that many people, I'm good. It's like, no. Like you have to remember you have a dance floor, if you're having a DJ, if you're having a band, if you're having a buffet, like so many factors come into space alignment that I don't think everyone thinks about because they just don't know. So those are a few things. And then probably the biggest one that I cannot stress enough is probably just thinking about time management in advance when booking. So there are obviously 3 vendors that come to mind when it comes about time, that I feel like couples don't think about when contracting themselves without a planner. So one would be the band situation. Okay, most bands have a 4-hour kind of limit, whether it's their minimum or their maximum. Your reception might be 4 hours, but then again, what about your ceremony? What about your cocktail hour? You also can't move your band. Or what if you have a longer reception? What if you have a 5-hour like window between when people are seated and the end of the dancing? Now you have to add another hour, and it's something you didn't think about because you're just like, I'm just going to book a band. Well, then what are you going to do? You're going to have a DJ at the end? Who's going to MC? So much time management. And then for photo and video, I feel like that's a big one too. Couples see, like, I love this photographer, and then they're like, I have to have them, but I saw that their lowest package offers 6 hours. 6 hours doesn't cover like anything. So, and same with video. Like I know there's some that like will offer like lower packages, which makes sense for certain scenarios. But for the most part, like an 8 hour is kind of standard. And then in other cases, you might need 9 or 10. So I think like thinking about time in advance is very difficult for couples to do because they don't understand how a timeline works. And that's fine. They're not supposed to. That's, our job. But when they're booking on their own and they don't have a planner, the biggest mistake is contracting with a vendor they love for the wrong amount of time and then realizing they have to like fix it or pay more or do something later on.
Yeah, that's a part that sucks is when couples approach us, they expect an 8 hour video. They expect a 6 hour video. I'm like, we're not shooting the entire time. Yeah, it's like, setting up in situations and everything like that. So I like that your goal is time management because time is money, right? We always tell couples, if you're spending $50,000 on your wedding and it's a 10-hour wedding, every hour that you waste is $5,000.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
Yeah, it sucks because they don't see that, and then when we tell them that, they're like, "Oh, yeah."
And then they think like, "Oh, like 6 hours, like is what I have from ceremony to reception end. That's great. Like, so I only need video for those 6 hours, or I only need them for, maybe even 8 hours. But if you're getting ready, end time is like well in advance from your ceremony start time. You need that footage, or you need that to be captured. So that's more hours on the front end that you're going to need. And then you need to make sure you have some to the back end, especially if you're doing like a grand exit. Like there's no like pause time. You don't get to be like, you know what, for those 2 hours we were dancing, we don't really need you, but we need you for the grand exit. No, like you have to pay for all of it. So, so I think like just making sure and everything takes time. And I don't think people understand that. Like the funniest thing that I hear is, wow, I have to start hair and makeup at what time? And I'm like, yeah, because it takes time. Like you have 6 people in your bridal party plus 2 moms plus yourself. Like it takes time and I need you done by here because it's going to take you 30 minutes to get in your dress. And they're like, it won't take me 30 minutes. Like I put it on in 10 minutes. I'm like, no. Because when photo and video are there, it's going to be, okay, maid of honor, come over, pretend you're buttoning her up. Okay, now you stop. Now, mom, it's your turn. Okay, now pretend to put on your shoes, but don't really put them on yet. So everything takes time. And I think that's something that definitely gets overlooked in the beginning, which you kind of have to think about in the beginning. It was just like preliminary and then obviously finalize as you get closer.
Yeah, I think couples don't really see, they only see weddings when they hire a photo and video team. They only see weddings as like a photo shoot. But in reality, our job is it's not editorial. It's more of like storytelling, right? So for example, we need time for prep. Like when you said the mom needs to be there putting the shoes or buttoning you up, it's because we want to have that moment with mom because there's no mother and daughter dance, at least not all the time. So that's mom's moment. And we want to capture that too.
Exactly. So I think like time is definitely something that I see as probably the biggest mistake on the front end if we're not mindful from the beginning. And then it ends up costing you both time and money in the later. So in the later time, I don't know where I was going with that. I was like, we had a night, just in case anyone wants to know. We had a birthday party last night, me and Paul. So anyway, but so we had that. Super cute. But yeah, time is probably the biggest mistake I see couples make. So think about your time before you are booking your venue, your vendors, especially anyone who's involved with time. And then don't forget any overtime hours if you want that little after party. All costs more too, because then your staff needs to stay on longer. And that's probably your planner, maybe your photo, definitely your music. And then, of course, serving staff and banquet staff. So things to keep in mind is time management.
I think for me, the thing I'm grateful for is when we raised our prices, we started working with higher tier vendors like you, and it's more organized, and the couple just always says, yes, we trust you and just do your thing. And I like that because not only is it their personality, but our job to educate them that, yeah, it's, you can, but we have to pay more, stuff like that.
Correct. And I think like even on our end with the like applying a relationship with photo and video, um, making sure that we also allot time within your contracted hours for things like, hey, other vendors like florists and rentals, make sure the ballroom is set up 30 minutes before we even expect photo and video to get in here. Because if I waste any time of, oops, we're 20 minutes late, the ballroom is really not ready yet for you to come shoot before guests come in, that just all eats into your time that we could be using, for the couple. So making sure that like everything's kind of, I want to call it like preset, not just for guests, but for photo and video. So it's even before guests like see anything. I want to make sure like everything's preset for photo and video capture. So that way it's not eating into the time that the couple has contracted for and needs that shoot time for themselves.
Okay. So now I wanted to talk to you about the reality of doing weddings in SoCal, because this podcast, this blog is supposed to be for people who are getting married in California, and
Okay.
from an honest perspective from vendors and especially us, like photo and video, because I want to make sure that couples know if it's going to be worth it or not. And
Right.
when it comes to doing weddings in SoCal, there's an issue with a lot of things. And it, I guess I wanted to ask you what you want couples to know about the reality of having weddings here in California.
Well, I can kind of understand the undertones of what you're going with here. And that's probably going to be budget. So, because that's the hot topic every year. It's the same thing every year. I mean, I literally don't know when I am not talking to somebody about real estate budgets in SoCal, whether it's a vendor, potential clients, like always about budget. Oh my gosh. So it's even funnier because somebody coming from, like another state where I did weddings and then like coming here, everyone like automatically assumes like, oh, it's going to be the same. Yes and no. I mean, so I should back up. So weddings in California are really expensive. We are basically the trendsetter for the rest of the country. So everyone always looks like all my friends still on the East Coast, or even some of my Vegas vendors. We do weddings in Las Vegas. Just
Oh, that's right.
We do. So they all ask like, what are you guys doing? What's the trends right now? Like they're constantly like asking me when I see them or talk to them, like what's happening here so that they can get ahead of the curve for out there. So, or even my friends getting married like on the East Coast, they're always like, oh my God, girl, I saw what you did. And like, that's so pretty and so cool. I want to do that. I'm like, okay, well, save your pennies. So it just, everything adds up. And I think California definitely, obviously, it's one of the most expensive states here. So probably the only other two states that are very comparable in price point, like to a T, would probably be New York and New York City. Let me be very explicit there. Not the country, New York, not upstate New York, and probably like even Miami. So like those two are extremely expensive and they have very similar brackets to us. With that being said, even though our Las Vegas, which people always think is crazy that I say this, Las Vegas market, yes, there is your drive-through. Absolutely. Go pull a Sophie Turner. Have a good time at a little chapel. But they're expensive. So anything that's also like isolated, like a desert, guess what? Those flowers come from LA. And those flowers from LA are expensive. So I think people just need to realize, that it's not a famous line because I've heard it from someone else. So it's not my famous line, but I've heard that basically the line is, a wedding is a luxury and getting married is, the action. So if you want to get married, that's easy to do. It doesn't cost you much. You can have a beautiful little session at the courthouse. You can get married. Like it's a physical act. But having a wedding is a luxury. So not everyone can have a wedding. It's a luxury expense in your life, but it's also an investment. So if this is something that you're like, this is one of the most important days of my life, and I want to do it right, you have to look at it as like an investment to the start of your new chapter in life together. So an investment always costs something. So I have no problem. Everybody knows I am an open book, and I'd be happy to talk numbers with everyone. So here we go. So California, SoCal in particular, is extremely expensive. I would definitely say Orange County, LA, even some sectors of like Ventura County, if we're talking like Santa Barbara, Malibu, things like that. Those are all very expensive. San Diego is still a pretty penny. So it's Palm Springs, but depending on the time of year, they can be a little slightly more cost effective. Just kind of depends. Again, time of year. But speaking OC and LA strictly, since that's where we pretty much work the most, they're very expensive. So there's your average market, there's your luxury market, there's your ultra luxury market. I would say that probably a luxury market is comparable to most of our couples, and a luxury market typically starts at $1,000 a person, and that's but that's like for everything. So that's like, your floral, your video, your entertainment, your planner, your venue, your food costs. It's normally around there. I think you can get away with maybe like $900 per person, but realistically, if you're having a luxury wedding, you're starting at $1,000, and then let's not even get into ultra luxury. That's like a whole different animal. That's celebrity weddings. That's oil money. That's like crazy stuff. So that's very, very expensive weddings, where I feel like $1,000 wouldn't even be close to what they would be spending. And then of course your average is going to be beautiful weddings. Still an average cost of something a little bit more practical is going to be for food and beverage. There's something called plus, which I'll get into for a second, but for food and beverage for an average price wedding, just to give you kind of the tier system. So let's just talk food and bev. So at a venue, so you're booking a venue, they have a caterer, or maybe they have a preferred caterer and you pick them, or they do catering in-house. So you're looking at about like a $150 to $250 mark per person for an average wedding, after plus, depending on what you book. So obviously your lower end tier could just be like a single plated option meal. It could be a buffet. It could be just a beer and wine hosted bar. And your higher end, your 250, could be like maybe a plated meal with 2 options, maybe a liquor hosted bar for the entire event. And when I say after plus, that means after tax and service charge. And that's something people don't think about, because they get sent a menu and it's maybe says like $65 a person, and then maybe like open bar is like $40 a person. So they're like, okay, like 105, like that's not so bad. And I'm like, whoa. But then there's a 22% service charge, and then there is, state tax, well, county state tax technically, because LA and OC are different. But there's a plus on top of that. So when all said and done, okay, now you're at like 150, or now you're at like 200, and that's for an average price. And now if we're talking like the luxury, not ultra luxury, but like, well, actually, ultra luxury would still start maybe on the same. You could be anywhere between like a $350 to a $500 per person price point for just food and beverage. So after your so same thing, depending on what you're looking for, and then what your expectations are. But I think those are kind of realistic numbers for just food and bev. I'm totally not going to get into photo, video, or vendors, because I know some people will be butthurt if I do. So I'm not going there. But let me just say, if you charge less than $2,000, you should reconsider how you make a living. But that's all I'm going with there, because I couldn't even afford my rent at that point, or to eat.
Oh yeah.
I'd have to move home. So yeah, that's like, I tell everyone in my couples, I'm like, there is, when it comes to the world of vendors, there is a normal price point. There is also that luxury price point. And then there's like a good deal, like, hey, that's a great vendor, and I don't know how you got that deal, but that's, you should book it. And then there's the, oh my God, run as far away as you possibly can, because that is the scariest price point I've ever heard for a band. So I think there's definitely, the expectation of you get what you pay for, and that says anything in life. So if you have certain expectations for your wedding, then you can kind of make anything happen. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, because I know Paul and I said this earlier before we got on here, oh, a $25,000 wedding in SoCal is not doable. Oh, it's totally doable. It's just, how many people are coming? Are you doing it in your backyard? Do you have a taco cart coming? So yeah, so it's like, it is doable, just what are those expectations? So again, expectations versus reality. Pinterest is your friend, not really your friend. So it's the same kind of thing when it comes to planning your wedding. And yes, Southern California is extremely expensive. So if you are considering having your wedding here, I would highly recommend doing your homework as much as possible first before you even talk to anyone. Like, do not talk to your friends. Do not even talk to like family for advice unless it's about budget. But start reaching out to venues, I would say, is number one, and just kind of ask them. Don't even ask for a menu or food and beverage minimum. I would simply ask, hey, on average, how much do your weddings cost here for 100 people or 150 people? And they'll tell you, or they'll tell you a price per person. That's the average price point. And then you can ask for an estimate based on your needs, or book a planner, and then your planner will do all that research and homework for you and make sure that they're presenting you with correct and accurate estimates based on your needs and expectations.
Oh my gosh.
Is that good? Was that an okay answer? I don't know. I can't tell. Sometimes I'm just talking.
That was great. That's great.
So we're talking. I don't know what comes out of my mouth. It's like word vomit because I just say what I think.
It's
so,
great. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I want to backtrack a little bit because you were saying that, you know, when it comes to hiring photographers and videographers, I just wanted to add that, you know, it's especially for you, if the couple hires a photographer and a videographer who has no idea what they're doing or who gives subpar, we always tell the couples, you know, like when we have a couple who comes in here and they say, oh, the photographer, we already paid this much money to the photographer, so our videography budget isn't enough. We always tell them, you know what, just pay more for the photographer, like get more albums. And because if the photographer works alongside a videographer that's not good, they're just going to be in the photographer's way and it's going to ruin the photos. So save your money, just give it to the photographer, right? That's fair. And they end up booking us the same amount because they see the value. I hate that we have to like show them what the value is, but that's a thing. Like whenever you arrange something and the photographer and the videographer don't give it justice, right, then it's kind of like all for nothing, right? It sucks, right, because that's the only thing that they get to take home is photo and video.
Yep.
So
it's funny that you say that because I'm like the opposite. Like I don't have anything I can show them. I mean, I can show weddings that I've done in the past, but like, how does that justify my service abilities? So I almost almost swore in this one, so I didn't. But I almost get, you know, the bad end of the stick because for planners, you know, it's really crucial to kind of have like an in-person or a video call meeting. So I think that way they can try to show you their process or at least connect with them because you have to trust them. We can't just show you an album and be like, oh, this is how I edit my photos, or hey, I made this highlight video and don't you like how I do it? Like there is no tangible product. Like even for like a musician, you have videos of yourself playing. Like, what am I supposed to do? I can't show them how I plan 365 days a year. Like, I'm not gonna. Well, I could have a camera crew come around with me and, you know, make like a little TV show out of it. But like, I can't. So it's kind of hard on that end when it comes to like the sales and like trusting side. But it's something that I really commend. I think anyone else is like trying to show their products because we do have a saturated market. So trying to make yourself stand out and justify like why you are equals to that photographer they book, or why your videos are more professional than somebody else's, I think is still difficult to do. I don't know where I was going with this, but all I was going to say is, yes, I agree. And I even think like I'm in that same route where everyone's like, oh, my photos are the most important. Or sometimes I have couples who, thank goodness, listen to me. But it would be, oh, I don't know if I really need video. Like I was really into photography, you know, and that's all I really care about. I'm like, I'm going to let you know right now, like you are going to miss what was said in your toast or what was said for your vows. You're going to look at a photo and be like, why were we laughing so hard while that person was talking? So I think video is equally as important as photo for that matter.
Thank you. But I would say that I guess your point. Let me know if I'm feeling your point.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're like a coach, right, at a basketball team. You
Mhm.
don't get enough credit, but in the end, if the team wins, then that's what's important, right? You pick all of the
Exactly.
you
Great.
pick all of the players, right? Okay.
Perfect analogy.
So that's the thing. Like for me, I feel like as long as the vendors get a really good experience with a planner, the couples are just kind of like the couples, your couples, they value what you say, they value what we say us as well. And when we tell them, if you want this quality, then you should go with this vendor, it
Yeah,
kind of like that. So I feel like for you, it's the word of mouth that really brings out the, not just for vendors, also for the
absolutely.
clients. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now that we're talking about how amazing you are at your job, and I'm pretty sure there's couples out there that are already convinced to contact you.
Fabulous.
How would they how would they find a wedding planner like you if they're not in California, or how do they get to find a planner like you?
That is an interesting question. I think it still kind of goes back to like how we get our leads now. I think the best way for somebody who does not, because we do a ton of weddings. I'm talking 80% of our couples do not live in Southern California. Like that's how many. They're from the East Coast. They're from out of the country. They might just, I shouldn't categorize this as out of state, but they're from NorCal. I don't know. Like they're just not physically here to like do things. They're not here to like have meetings. They're maybe out here once a year and have to book everything while they're here. So I have a lot of couples who don't physically live here. And usually how they are able to research and find things is I do think having an online presence, not too back to my marketing roots, but having an online presence, like even on things like the Knot, whether you're paying for it or not, or like I hate Yelp, so I'm not gonna bring that up. I just think that's lies half the time. But like a reputable wedding site, whether it's Wedding Wire for you or the Knot, like just to kind of validate that human, but then go and like look at their website. And maybe if you already booked your venue, finding out those venue recommendations, I think are important because they obviously, and I'm not talking about a vendor list. I'm talking about venue recommendations. What are the differences? We're on some venue lists, some really great ones. And so like I'm not knocking them by any means, but I will say asking your site rep personally, hey, it's almost like if you were to ask me as your planner, hey, I really want a planner and I've been, looking at your list, I've been looking online and I'm just curious, like, who do you like to work with? And I think like asking a physical human as far as their recommendation, their referral says a lot more because yes, the reviews might validate who that person is, but it doesn't show who that person is. So even when I'm like looking for things that are not wedding related, whether it's like somewhere to get my nails done or like get my hair cut, like I would much rather have a referral from somebody that I trust and I know at this point than randomly, like I'll still go on Yelp or I'll still go somewhere and like, oh yeah, they had good reviews, that looks good, but then I still want to hear from somebody that I personally know, yes, that's a great place, you should go. So I think as far as couples who don't have a venue, I think online is definitely a huge factor. And then if you do really like that planner that you see online, I would do your homework on them on their other accounts. So whether that's their website itself, trying to get to know them, actually read their website, don't just look at it, so that you understand who they are. And then also, try to do some homework on them. LinkedIn is something that people like don't think about with weddings because it's a social. But I would totally creep somebody on LinkedIn because I think that is, yeah, creep, literally. I think that is something that shows like your more professional resume portfolio. So if you want to really know about somebody's history, especially if they're going to plan your wedding, like there's plenty of people who are like, I did my sister's baby shower and I think I just like want to be a wedding planner now. Okay, like maybe you should go on their LinkedIn and look at their resume and see how many years experience they have in this industry before you book them. So I LinkedIn and things like that, like just creep them online, like just be a little creepy for a little bit, find as much as you can as possible. And then if you have a venue, I would definitely take in the list to heart. And then on moving past that, going an extra step, I would physically ask your rep that is your sales rep, your catering sales rep, your manager, service manager, ask them like, who do you personally like to work with? Like, can you send me some recommendations? And just kind of, because we get a lot of referrals from that too. Like even some places that I'm not on a list on, like we get tons of referrals from the physical people who work there because we get along. And maybe they just haven't updated their list yet, so, or whatever, for whatever reason. But we get a lot of referrals from individuals. So those are my two. Either do your homework and creep on people, especially LinkedIn, that's my little tip, or to make sure they're legit. And then two, if you do have a venue, it doesn't hurt to ask your venue rep because they're going to know who they like to work with.
Amen. The key is consistency, right? And sometimes reviews online are made by, most of the time reviews online are made by people who got married once, and you don't really see the consistency. They're always happy. So asking other vendors about, because if you ask us,
for validations is even bigger, because it's not even like the couple on the wedding day like only sees everything that happens on the front end, and like we see everything that happens on the back end. Yeah, so I send like email recaps like to my couples, and because I have a good relationship with them, I do not filter it. So if it's a scenario where like maybe we just did event management, which now we only do for our preferred venues, but when we didn't and our couples would just book like random vendors I never heard of, like I would literally like put in the emails like, hey, just like my team caught the band drinking, or like this happened. I like just list everything out, and I think that builds into the bank of like, hey, we would refer this person again. So we see a lot more than couples who are leaving reviews. So yeah, definitely vendor recommendations and referrals are probably more valid.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. I'm glad we share the same sentiment.
For sure.
Okay. So now that, just like what I said, I'm pretty sure the couples are convinced to at least contact you. Would you mind letting them know how to reach you and where to reach you at?
Sure. So if you like somebody who is extremely transparent, since that's my East Coast hustle and me and my East Coast side, someone who's really transparent is going to be a cheerleader for you at the same time, you can definitely check out our website. It is perfecttheevent.com. So essentially it's going to be the word perfect, the word event altogether, but it's proper English, perfecttheevent.com. And on there is a contact form that you can reach out. And then on top of that, there's also my email listed there. So if you just want to email me directly, you're more than welcome to on our contact page.
That is perfect.
That's right.
So, okay. Now, we've been working alongside each other for a couple of years now. No, I'm just kidding. We've been working alongside each other for years now. And I've seen you reach this dream of yours in a very short amount of time. Like I'm blown away by how you've achieved this. And it's because of your work ethic and your impeccable taste. And I thank you for being that person in the industry that everyone can look at and, just draw inspiration from.
Well,
don't cry.
It is short. So like, that's what's like kind of scary is I'm almost like, okay, I got to keep the momentum going. Like, what's happening? So, vendor side point, it's a little scary how fast things have.
But
it's so quickly.
That's with you. You keep it consistent. You keep your energy consistent, and it's just, everyone gravitates towards you because of that energy. And
thanks, Paul.
You owe me lunch.
I know, because those tacos last night, I guess.
Oh my God.
Us because so we gotta go to the next spot.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, bye, Paul. See you soon.
That's the interview, and I hope you learned something today. Feel free to reach out to our guest if you have any questions by clicking on their link in the show notes. This episode of the How to Wedding Podcast is done, but be sure to hit subscribe to our podcast to keep you up to date. Share this to someone who'll need it, and join the Facebook group to keep the discussion going. See you next time, and don't forget, if we're going to get lost,